Sahil, great to connect today. Let me give you a little background on how we got to this point. I was in the Atlanta airport looking at books and I saw your book, pulled it off the shelf. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I'm very interested in personal finance, but I could tell there was more than just a personal finance angle on it. So I started thumbing through. It's like, oh, this is interesting. This is the kind of stuff I would love to, I'd love to talk to this guy on my podcast. Then I realized that we were both at Stanford for the entire time I was there for law school. You were playing baseball. I had played football at BYU before that. And so I sent you a random email and I said, hey, Sahil, I'm obviously a better athlete than you because I played football and you're a baseball player, but you are, much smarter than me and your brain is in much better shape. I knew that was a little bit of a gamble to just send that cold email, but you responded graciously, agreed to come on the podcast. So anyway, great to connect today, Sahil. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was a great cold email, and as someone who has benefited a lot from a few cold emails in my own life, I'm always on the lookout for good ones.
Really appreciate it. And I'm excited to talk with you because of this topic. So as you think about what you have learned about wealth, what would you most like to pass on to others?
The number one message and lesson that I would want to pass on to everyone, and when I think of everyone, I really do think about my son. I have a 3-year-old, and what message do I want him to take away from all of this work and these ideas? It's that you will never feel successful. You will never feel wealthy unless you create your own definition of what that means. So much of our lives, so much of our personal journeys, we, whether we know it or not, have accepted these pathways by default, these definitions by default, meaning we are consenting to someone else's definition of what it means to live a good life. Traditionally, in our society, the definition we've consented to is that wealth and success are all about money. It's about accumulating things, fancy things, money, status, titles, promotions, all of that. And what I have seen in spending time with thousands of people over the last several years researching for this book, putting it out into the world, and then the stories that have come in since, is that the pathway to living a true, beautiful life is the one where you create your own definition, where you measure yourself against your own scoreboard. Because if you're constantly looking at a scoreboard that was just handed to you, that you never opted into, you're just going to be chasing someone else's version of what a good life looks like. You will always feel like you need to reach and reach and reach for more. That was the path that I was on. I took a job that I thought was the job that was going to give me that. I was going to give me the money and the status and those things. And I did so with this deeply ingrained belief that I was going to wake up one day, have enough of all those things, and feel like I've arrived, I've made it, my whole life is good, right? It's called the arrival fallacy. It's this idea we build up these things as being the destination, the point at which we will wake up and say, I've arrived, right? And in our own lives, we've all experienced this at some point along the way. You've had something where you've built it up as the destination. Everything's going to be different when I get X, when I get this promotion, when I make this amount of money, when I have kids, whatever the thing is. And if you keep playing on someone else's scoreboard in that way, keep convincing yourself that your satisfaction, your contentment, your fulfillment, your happiness is on the other side of something, whatever it is, you're just going to end up continuing to march to this mirage that just disappears and reappears until you're dead. And so the antidote to that is getting very clear on your own definition, what the life is that you really want to build, not the one that you've been told by your family or your friends or by social media that you should want, but what you actually want your life to look like. And then you can go take actions to build that life.
Really cool to hear you talk about your motivation, being your son in part, as my children was the motivation for this podcast and lessons I wanted to share with them. I love the idea of create your own definition of wealth. And I heard you say something about the jobs that people choose. And it was some really good advice about what was it? Something like, do I actually want this job? And maybe you could finish it. Or what's a better question than, do I actually want this job?
Yeah, there's a question that I love to ask young people before they take their first job, which is, do you want this job or do you want other people to see you having this job?
So good.
And you can apply that to anything, by the way. Like it's great for jobs, but it's also for, buying something. You're about to buy some item. You're like, do you actually want this thing or do you want other people to see you having this thing? And oftentimes we are making decisions, we are making choices purely for the benefit of someone else. Like we think we are going to impress all these other people, that they're going to think so highly of us, that they're going to respect and admire us. The truth is that nobody cares. Nobody is spending that much time thinking about you. Maybe your mom. Beyond that, very few people are thinking about you at all. And so living our whole lives in this loop of just trying to impress others through purchases, through status games, it's just a road to nowhere. And the earlier in life that you learn that, you start operating differently. You start learning that there are other sources of true fulfillment and happiness. And it really comes from creating your own definition of what that's going to look like.
Such a good question. I'd never heard that. Do I want this job or do I want other people to see me having this job? It reminds me of something Morgan Housel said. If you're driving a nice car and somebody sees you in it, they're not thinking you're cool. All they're thinking about is how they want that car. And like you say, people aren't thinking about us as much as we think they are. And I really like your approach because one of the exercises I do with my students is I often, actually, one of the exercises I do with my students is first day of class, I will say, what do you want to be doing in 20 years?
Mhm.
Every single semester, at least probably 10%, sometimes upwards of maybe 40 to 50% will say, I want to get rich and retire or some version of that. And what I'm afraid of every time is the arrival fallacy for students thinking, I just want to get rich and then I'll be happy, and then I'll be happy. So, as you think about the types of wealth, then, what types of wealth are you thinking about to uh, create your own definition?
So the new scoreboard, if you will, that I've proposed and argued for is this idea of the five types of wealth. If the old scoreboard was just about financial wealth, you're going to go make money, that was how you measured your life. The new scoreboard does include that, but it expands beyond it. So the five types of wealth that I talk about are time wealth, which is all about freedom to choose how you spend your time, who you spend it with, where you spend it, when you trade it for other things. Social wealth is all about your relationships, the people in your life. Mental wealth is about purpose and growth and about creating the space necessary to actually wrestle with some of these bigger picture, more unanswerable questions in your life, whether through spirituality, religion, solitude, meditation, what have you. Physical wealth is the fourth type. That's about health and vitality, taking care of yourself with controllable actions to make sure that you fight against the natural decay and atrophy that your body goes through over time. And then financial wealth is the fifth type, but with the specific nuance of really understanding what enough means to you. The recognition being that your expectations are your single greatest financial liability. If you allow your expectations to rise faster than your assets, you will never feel wealthy. So those five types of wealth collectively comprise this idea of a new scoreboard, a new way to measure your life across the bigger picture of the things that do contribute to this fulfilled, happy, content life that we are all trying to go and build. The idea is that when you measure the right things, now you can take the right actions to go and create those desired outcomes.
What I really love about your scoreboard is it is perfectly in line with some of the best research that we have on motivation and fundamental needs we have as humans. And so Deci and Ryan talked about three of our fundamental motives of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. We all want to have control over our time. We all want to get good at things, and we all want to be doing something for a broader purpose. And the five types of wealth you talk about all fit into those categories. They just provide a little more detail on how we can achieve those things. And then one other thing I was thinking was a quote that I heard. I interviewed Bob Sutton, another Stanford guy, and he talked about an idea that I loved that Joe Heller, so the author of Catch 22, amazing book, was talking to Kurt Vonnegut. And I forget all of the context, and maybe you know because this is right up your alley. But he said something about how he had something that others didn't have. He had the knowledge that he had enough.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. They were walking around at this billionaire's home in the Hamptons. It was Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller. And Vonnegut says to Heller, Joe, how does it feel that just yesterday, the owner of this home made more money than your most famous book, Catch 22, made in its entire lifetime?
Mm.
And Heller thinks about it for a second. He said, yes, but I've got something that he'll never have. And Vonnegut says, "Oh, yeah, what's that?" And Heller replies, "The knowledge that I've got enough."
So good. And I need to remember that context. Much better story hearing you describe it. Okay. What has most surprised you as you've gone down this path of pursuing these five types of wealth?
How different it looks and feels to people who have not embraced their own way. Um, there's so much of our desires and of the life that we build that is mimetic. It's based on our surroundings and our environment. If you live in, a small town in America and you decide you want to live a simple life, you want to prioritize family and time with the people you love and your health and solitude and these things, and you're not going to chase all sorts of fancy things and items. It looks perfectly reasonable, and you're going to be able to do that and feel very happy, probably. If you try to do that exact same thing living in the heart of Manhattan in New York City, it's going to feel very, very difficult because your environment dictates so much of these things that you think you want. You're going to have all of these external pressures around you as a result. And so I have really seen the struggle of that, of living differently, from your environment. That there is very much like this cultural osmosis that happens to people. So many rich people that I've met in this journey, extraordinarily rich people, spend all of their time trying to figure out ways to impress even more extraordinarily rich people. And it strikes me as one of the dumbest games you can think of playing, but I'm willing to bet that most of them don't know they're playing it
Yeah.
because it's just the byproduct of this cultural osmosis. And so it takes extraordinary effort to fight against those surroundings in that way. It's highly rewarding, but very, very difficult.
One of my favorite books is a book written by Joe Henrich, Harvard professor, called The Secret of Our Success. And
Hmm.
he argues that the reason our species has been successful above all other species is because we mimic each other to a degree that other species don't. And what that allows us to do is to pass on cultural knowledge generation to generation to generation that we don't even know why we do all the things we do, but the things that get passed on generally are adaptive. But of course, that comes at the cost of we mimic the people we're around no matter what, whether we like it or not, we mimic them. And I love this idea of, this mimetic desire. And it also made me think of Warren Buffett, who talks about how it isn't greed that drives the world, it's envy. We are so
Hmm.
prone to just want the things that other people have. Any final things you'd like to say here as we wrap up, Sahil?
I would just say to everyone out there, it is possible to live by your own design. You do not have to accept the defaults that you were handed around anything in your life. The default definitions of success, of meaning, all of those things are things that you can question. And it takes effort to question them. It's not always going to be comfortable to question them. But because of that, and because so few people will, it is extraordinarily rewarding. And I hope that everyone that listens to this, I hope that everyone that reads the book, just takes a few moments to question those things that they've automatically assumed about the world and about what it means to be successful, because I've seen the benefit of doing so in my own life.
We get to change the story we tell ourselves, as was helpful for you, as you talk about in the book. Uh, Sahil, I love these ideas, love the stories, love the concepts. I'm going to try and do a better job. Look forward to reading the book now that I've talked to you, the book that triggered this whole interview. So anyway, thanks again. Love it. Perfect for the podcast. Appreciate you spending your time and sharing these lessons with us today.
Thank you.